Have you ever really paused, and wondered why you are the way you are? Why certain thoughts come uninvited? Why certain desires linger just beneath the surface of your mind like shadows at dusk, waiting to emerge the moment your guard drops? Have you felt the pull of something within you, ancient, primal, persistent, that seems to steer your decisions, your habits, your relationships, and even your self-worth? Most people think they are fully in control, that their actions are born from conscious thought and rational intent. But Carl Jung would have disagreed. He believed that beneath the surface of our waking life lies a vast, churning reservoir of unconscious material memories, symbols, traumas, instincts. And among the most powerful forces hiding in that abyss is something we rarely speak of with honesty or clarity: sex. Not sex in the crude or simplistic sense, but something far more vast and haunting. Sex as a metaphor. Sex as energy. Sex as the unspoken force that governs not just our pleasure, but our identity. From the moment we are born, this force begins to shape us. Before we even understand it, it speaks through us. It influences how we present ourselves to the world, how we dress, how we smile, how we engage with others. It feeds into our pursuit of beauty, of admiration, of success. It guides us as we chase status, affection, influence, not because we are superficial, but because we are wired to want to be desired, to be chosen. And so much of what we define as ambition is merely an extension of this deeper, unacknowledged hunger. Jung saw this clearly. He did not see sexuality as just physical. To him, it was psychic, mythic, a symbolic power that holds within it our creativity, our shadow, our suffering. And when this force is repressed, when it is exiled to the corners of our psyche, it does not die. It transforms. It becomes anxiety, rage, depression, addiction, loneliness dressed as independence, success hollowed out by emptiness. We live in a society obsessed with productivity and appearances, a world that celebrates discipline, image, and control. And yet beneath the surface of many lives lies a war between who we are and who we pretend to be, a war between desire and denial, between instinct and image. Because we are taught from a young age to fear the very thing that makes us feel most alive. We are told that desire is dangerous, that sexual energy is shameful, that control is purity. And so we learn to repress. We silence our instincts. We bury our urges beneath layers of performance, professionalism, politeness, religious piety, or spiritual detachment. But repression is not transformation. It is fragmentation. It is disconnection. It is a slow, quiet death of the self. Jung understood this fragmentation well. He saw how the modern individual wears a persona, a mask created to meet the expectations of society. But behind this mask lives the shadow, the disowned self, the parts we have deemed unacceptable. And in the heart of the shadow lies our rejected sexual energy. Not just erotic desire, but Eros itself, the drive to connect, to create, to become whole. Jung believed that when we cut ourselves off from Eros, we sever the root of our vitality. We become mechanical. We become driven by compulsions we don't understand, trapped in cycles we can't break, haunted by desires we don't name. Think about it. How many people live their lives pursuing success not for the joy of creation, but for validation? How many seek relationships not out of love, but out of a need to be seen, to be affirmed, to be told they are worthy? How many of us scroll endlessly, consume endlessly, work endlessly, not because we are driven, but because we are avoiding something? That something is often the denied part of ourselves, the sexual, instinctual feeling self that has been exiled. And when that self is denied, it becomes the architect of our suffering. It builds false goals. It chooses partners who wound us. It sabotages our peace. Because what we repress doesn't go away. It becomes fate. And this is the terrifying beauty of Jung's insight. What you do not bring to consciousness will continue to rule your life, and you will call it destiny. Most of us live in a trance, repeating patterns that are not truly ours. We fall in love with people who mirror our wounds. We chase careers that mirror our fears. We build lives that reflect our defenses, not our truth. All because a part of us, a deeply sexual, deeply sacred part, has been cast into the shadow. And when something sacred is denied, it does not disappear. It becomes twisted. It cries out through symptoms. It speaks in nightmares. It shows up in moments of self-sabotage, in relationships that implode, in compulsions that we can't explain. The more we deny it, the more power it gains. Yet there is a path forward, a way to reclaim what has been buried. Not by indulging mindlessly in every desire, nor by repressing them entirely, but by integrating, by becoming conscious. Jung's path was the path of individuation, the journey to become whole. And to do that, one must descend into the unconscious, confront the shadow, and reclaim the energy hidden within. This means acknowledging the sexual self, not as something shameful, but as something human, something sacred, something essential to our creativity, our spirituality, our authenticity. This is not the path of comfort. It is the path of courage, the path of facing what society taught you to fear and making peace with it. Because sexual energy at its core is not about sex. It is about life. It is about the fire that animates the soul. It is the urge to express, to connect, to transcend. When integrated, it becomes the source of profound creativity, deep love, and unshakable presence. It is the root of art, poetry, music, and mysticism. It is the force that compels us to grow. But when repressed, it becomes a curse. It seeps into our lives through side doors. It manifests as shame, jealousy, power struggles, numbness. It poisons our intimacy. It clouds our clarity. And so the question arises, one that you must answer alone in the silence of your own soul. Are you willing to face it? Are you willing to see what you've buried? To confront the lies you've told yourself? To look in the mirror and see the desires, the impulses, the hunger you've disowned? This isn't just a psychological question. It is a spiritual one, because until you do, you will never be free. You will live according to scripts you did not write. You will suffer in ways you don't understand. You will chase fulfillment in all the wrong places. But if you dare to turn inward, if you dare to reclaim the forgotten parts of yourself, especially this one, you may find something extraordinary. A self that is not fractured. A life that is not reactive. A love that is not desperate. Jung did not offer easy answers. He offered a mirror. And what you see in that mirror may frighten you, but it will also reveal the truth. And in that truth is the beginning of healing, of integration, of liberation, because the energy you fear is the energy you need. And the part of you that feels most dangerous may be the key to becoming fully alive. How many of your most pivotal life decisions, those that shaped who you are, where you are, and how you are seen, were driven not by your truth, but by your desire to be desired? How many times have you shaped yourself into a version you thought would attract approval, admiration, or affection, even if it took you further away from your authentic self? These questions, when answered with brutal honesty, often lead to a disturbing realization that much of your life might not actually belong to you. Instead, it belongs to an unacknowledged hunger, a silent allegiance to what Carl Jung called the collective unconscious. This collective unconscious in our modern world manifests as a cultural sexual mold, a complex web of unspoken standards, roles, fantasies, and expectations that dictate what is attractive, what is acceptable, and what is excessive. You absorb it passively through media, family, relationships, and social norms, until it begins to shape your desires, your relationships, even your body language. It tells you whom to desire, when, how much, and in what way. And if you find yourself outside of that mold, if you don't match its criteria, you're left feeling broken, strange, inadequate. But here's the danger. The more you bend to fit into that mold, the more disconnected you become from your inner truth. The farther you move from your essence, the louder the cry from within. And that cry doesn't come as words. It comes as symptoms. Jung once said that symptoms are the soul's attempt to heal itself. So, when you feel anxiety, depression, insomnia, emptiness, or existential dread, those are not just problems to be fixed. They are signals, deep, primal calls from a part of you that has been silenced and exiled. Often, that cry is the voice of your unintegrated sexual energy. And I'm not speaking about sex in its shallow, commodified form. Not the quick image sold in ads or screens. I'm talking about Eros, the ancient raw force that connects you to your vitality, your creativity, your longing, your power. Jung believed this Eros was key to the individuation process, the journey of becoming your true self. It's the spark behind personal alchemy. But before that alchemy can begin, you must confront a painful truth. You are not free. Your chains are not just social or historical, they're internal. They are in your unconscious, woven into your shadow, hidden in the dusty corners where your sexuality was shamed, distorted, and hidden. And unless you dare to go there, unless you face the parts of yourself you've been taught to fear or reject, you will keep searching for them in others. You will keep mistaking outer things, love, recognition, success, for the inner connection you truly crave. Here lies the paradox. What you're searching for isn't outside you. It's the original flame that's always been there. But we've been trained to ignore that door, to pretend it doesn't exist. And yet, when you decide to open it, when you stop numbing it or chasing it through others, everything changes. Because that door leads to your most honest, dangerous, and powerful self. The part untouched by pretense. The part that burns with life. And here's where things get even more twisted. Most people not only deny this deep energy, they project it. Jung said, "What you don't make conscious will appear in your life as fate." And perhaps nothing is projected more fiercely than repressed sexual desire. This is why so many relationships are chaotic, obsessive, or filled with idealization and emotional dependency. Because you're not loving the other, you're loving your own projection, the part of yourself you haven't learned to integrate. That person becomes a mirror, reflecting back the Eros you've buried. So, when someone dazzles you, when their presence feels overwhelming or mystical, you must ask, is this really about them? Or is this about the part of me they awaken? That's the trap. You fall in love, not with the person, but with what they represent, a forgotten part of you. And when that awakening is too intense, it destabilizes your sense of self. You chase it like an addict, not because of love, but because of need. They become the gate to your own power. But you don't know that, so you call it destiny, soulmate, twin flame. You justify the attachment, the obsession, the suffering. Jung saw this pattern clearly. Men projecting their anima onto women, women projecting their animus onto men. These aren't abstract archetypes, they are living forces inside you. And every time someone enters your life and shakes your foundation, they are touching one of these unintegrated aspects. Most people, when faced with such a person, either run toward them compulsively or run away in fear. Because true Eros is not comfortable. It strips you bare. It removes your masks. It forces you to look at yourself without the illusion of control. But why does Eros hold such terrifying power? Because it is not just biological. It is mythic. It's the force of creation, transformation, destruction. In every ancient culture, sexuality was both sacred and dangerous. And it's no coincidence that the sexual act is one of the few moments where the ego dissolves, where control disappears, where the divine and the animal meet. That's why religion, society, and ideology have always sought to regulate it. Because whoever controls, sex controls the individual. And here's the most haunting part. You don't need to have sex to be controlled by sex. You can be celibate by choice or circumstance and still be ruled by that energy if you don't consciously integrate it. Eros will manifest regardless. If it's repressed, it won't vanish. It will find new disguises. It will seep into your fantasies, your relationships, your envy, your need for validation, your creative blocks, your fear of intimacy. It will wear the mask of pride, jealousy, addiction, or even self-sabotage. Because even that can be a form of punishment for denying your truth. Jung warned that what doesn't transform, repeats. And repressed desire doesn't die. It becomes compulsion. It becomes generational trauma. Patterns passed down like invisible scripts. How? many family tragedies, how many toxic dynamics, how many unexplained breakdowns have their root in this? In silenced Eros, in unlived truths, in marriages that became tombs, in children who inherit shame and silence, in entire lineages where the body's wisdom was never allowed to speak. Because no one dares to face it, no one dares to look at the real source, and yet the unconscious doesn't care about your avoidance. It doesn't wait politely. It doesn't negotiate. It expresses itself whether you like it or not. And if you don't provide a conscious, creative, sacred outlet for Eros, it will express itself through chaos, through crisis, through longing that never ends. Sometimes it surfaces as neurosis. Other times, it creeps into your nights as unsettling dreams. Occasionally, it bursts forth as an inexplicable passion, and at other times it lingers in the shadows, so deeply embedded that you don't even realize it's there. Yet it governs your thoughts, your decisions, the relationships you form, and the fears you nurse. This is why Carl Jung insisted again and again on the need for integration. He knew that repressing desire was not enough. Controlling your instincts wasn't healing, it was hiding. And what is hidden in time controls you more than what is known. To truly evolve, you must listen to your desire. Not moralize it, not escape from it, but truly listen. Because within that raw, untamed energy lies a key, an evolutionary force that, when honored, can lead to transformation. Desire, or what the ancients called Eros, is not inherently sinful or shameful. On the contrary, when it's not twisted or suppressed, Eros is one of the most powerful creative forces in existence. It births art, fuels innovation, catalyzes personal transformation. It's not a weakness. It's potential that can either burn you or illuminate you, depending on what you do with it. Jung saw this clearly and linked it to the ancient science of alchemy. Just as lead could be turned into gold, the instinctive could be transformed into purpose. The primal could be elevated into awareness. Passion, if consciously embraced, could become a gateway to consciousness. But this only happens if you're brave enough to stop running, to sit in silence with your darkness, to stop blaming others for the things you've refused to acknowledge within yourself. And at the core of all this, what is it we fear most about our desires? Is it rejection, the judgment of others, or perhaps something even deeper? The realization that if we truly allowed ourselves to desire fully, honestly, without self-censorship, our carefully constructed life might collapse. We might see that many of our decisions have been wrapped in safety, chosen not out of passion, but out of fear. We've sacrificed depth for predictability, fire for comfort, and maybe that's the scariest part of all, not losing control, but realizing that we never had it, that what we proudly called willpower was, in reality, a cascade of unconscious impulses we never dared to understand. And so, what happens when you finally start to see the truth? You become free, not the shallow freedom of doing whatever you please, but the deeper, quieter kind, the kind that comes from understanding yourself so intimately that you no longer need masks. You no longer need to disguise your Eros or your yearning or your madness. You walk with it. You own it. You say to yourself, I see you. I don't need to hide you anymore. And that changes everything. It changes how you work, how you love, how you create, how you see yourself in the mirror. Because when you stop fighting with yourself, you finally come home to yourself. But be warned, freedom has a price. When you integrate your desire, you can no longer project your pain outward. You can no longer say, they did this to me, or life just happened this way. You are forced to confront the fact that you, in many cases, built your own prison. That your repression didn't make you noble, it made you a captive. And that's a bitter truth to digest, especially in a culture that romanticizes victimhood. We celebrate suffering, not as a stage to pass through, but as a permanent identity. Breaking out of that narrative takes more than insight. It takes courage. It requires a symbolic death. The death of the version of you that was shaped to be acceptable, agreeable, digestible to others. And yes, it will hurt, because certain parts of you cannot be healed without first being destroyed. And your relationship with desire is one of them. Now, imagine just for a moment that you had known this earlier. Imagine being taught from childhood that your sexual and creative energy wasn't dangerous, but sacred. That your Eros was not a monster to silence, but a compass to follow. That you didn't have to hide it, but learn how to channel it into art, into action, into love, into meaning. What kind of adult would you be now? What kind of life would you be living? Of course, you cannot rewrite the past, but you can choose from this moment forward whether to keep denying this vital part of yourself or finally let it transform you. And the miracle is that when you begin to integrate your Eros, it stops controlling you. You no longer seek constant validation. You're no longer pulled into games of manipulation or tangled in cycles of emotional addiction. Because when Eros becomes conscious, it becomes light. A powerful, sometimes uncomfortable, but deeply healing light. A light that not only shows you who you are, but who you could become if you dared to live fully. So, the next time you're overwhelmed by a desire you can't explain, when you're paralyzed by an image, a person, a thought, pause. Don't suppress it. Don't label it as bad or inappropriate. Ask yourself, what part of me is speaking right now? What part of me wants to be seen, heard, felt? What if this desire is not the problem, but the invitation? What if just maybe it's the door? But be careful. Just when you think you've arrived, when you think you've understood everything, a new trap appears. The final, most seductive trap, the spiritual ego, the enlightened persona, that inner whisper that says, you've transcended desire. You're beyond it now. Don't fall for it. That too is a mask, because Eros is not something to be overcome. It's something to be honored. It's not a staircase you rise above. It's a fire you learn to carry without being consumed. And this is where the work becomes delicate. The goal is not just to awaken to desire, but to walk alongside it without turning it into your identity, without clinging, without boasting, without using it as a new form of control. To understand that Eros is not your enemy, nor your god. It is simply a sacred fragment of the fire that lives within you. And like any fire, it can burn or illuminate depending on whether you deny it or recognize it. Look around. Everyone seems to be running towards something: money, fame, love, perfection. But what if all these pursuits were just unconscious attempts to reconnect with a part of themselves they've buried? What if the real journey isn't outward, but inward, toward the part of you that was silenced the moment you decided it was better to behave, to be accepted, to fit in? The world wants you domesticated, predictable, disconnected from your inner fire. Because a person who has made peace with their Eros cannot be manipulated. They no longer buy into hollow narratives. They don't need external validation to feel whole. And that makes them dangerous, not because they harm others, but because they awaken others. Their very presence becomes a mirror that reflects how asleep everyone else is. So here we are, you and I, at what may be the end of this journey or perhaps the beginning, depending on what you choose to do with what you've just heard. Because this hasn't been a lecture. It's a trigger, a crack in the wall, a question that might echo inside you for days. That's a good sign. It means something is shifting. Something buried is beginning to take shape, to ask for a name, for voice, for life. You may start noticing things now. Old memories may resurface. You may see patterns you once denied. You may realize that you've been afraid, not of your desire, but of the truth it reveals. And maybe you'll never look at yourself or others the same way again. That is the first step toward real transformation. Because only what is seen with brutal honesty can be changed. Before you leave, I ask one thing. If you've come this far, it's not by accident. Write this phrase in the comments. My shadow no longer scares me. Not for me, for you. To claim it, to affirm it, to say it out loud is a small but powerful act. It's the first step out of denial and into truth. And if this video has shaken something inside you, if even a single wall has cracked, subscribe. Because this channel is not here to entertain. It is here to challenge you, to push you, to show you what most people are too afraid to see. We are not here to decorate the surface, we're here to blow it up. So follow me if you're ready to look into the places others hide. If you're tired of superficial answers, if you're finally ready to stop lying to yourself, now turn off the screen. Close your eyes. Ask yourself, what part of me have I been denying all this time? Breathe and listen, because sometimes what you don't hear is what's screaming the loudest.